Joey, who travels through a different world in the midst of a special insect war, unexpectedly devours the soul of Yoshitaka Yoshikage. When he woke up, he received 3 legacies. A queen assassin, a fair lady who broke her hand, and a wallet that radiated white light and was quite attractive to him. But before he had a chance to carefully examine the heritage, Joey realized from the sudden incident that he was not in the JOJO world, but in the full-time hunter world. By the time Joey understood these things, he had already fallen into the pursuit of Chimeric Ant's novel keywords. Full-time Hunters Killer Queen No Pop-Ups, Full-time Hunters Killer Queen TXT Complete Collection Download, Full-time Hunters Killer Queen Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Insect Roar Killer Empress Breaks Her Hand. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Insect Roar X Killer Queen X Broken Hand. When Joey opened his eyes, what he saw was a strange pink face. The owner of the face has cat-like raised ears, pink skin, and white pupils that stand up in the pink eyes, making it look like a normal person no matter what. But Joey was not surprised by this. After all, he has coexisted with the owner of this monster in soul form for several years. Joey knows the names and abilities of strange people very well. Stand in. Killer Queen. Coupled with his master Yoshitaka, who had consumed his soul by Joey for several years, everything now became clear. A few years ago, Joey, who had fallen asleep, only felt a pull from his soul and a pleasant piercing sound. Then, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a state of soul. He couldn't explain what a soul state was, but he knew very well that if he couldn't kill another soul in the same body as him, then waiting for him would be permanent death. So, he and the soul launched an attack on each other almost at the same time. Just different from Joey's jumping movements, another figure quickly appeared next to him. A figure with pink skin, strong muscles, and a champion belt around the waist. And when Joey saw the pink monster and combined it with the man's face with a black and white melon skin hairstyle at the back, he recognized the other person's identity in a swoop. Jilyang Jiaying. The characters from his beloved anime JOJO's Wonderful Adventure, as well as the main villain in JOJO's 4th installment, are the office worker Yoshitaka Yoshikage, who yearns for a peaceful life but always leaves a hand behind, and his double killer queen. At the moment of knowing the other person's identity, Joey's heart was very flustered. Because as an ordinary person, I am not a match for a double messenger. But at this moment, he had no time to think carefully. The flying movement did not stop, and Joey could even see clearly that the killer queen's hand was raised and aimed at his hand. Joey knew very well that with the killer queen's ability, victory and defeat would be born at the moment of contact between the two sides. And the loser will definitely be oneself. His brain was rapidly activated, but it was of no use. However, just as he was filled with despair in his heart, the figure of the assassin queen standing in front of him suddenly disappeared in a flash. As he pounced, he fiercely collided with Yoshitaka Yoshikage, who was also looking shocked behind the substitute. The next second, Joey felt the weakness of the Yoshitaka shadow beneath him. In just an instant, Joey made a judgment that his complete soul, whether in terms of strength or solidity, could not be compared to the Jiro Yoshikage after being separated from the double. In this situation, Joey only felt that the suppressed Yoshikage was constantly being drained of power and injected into his soul. Just a moment later, when the insect chirping that had been echoing throughout the unknown space since he appeared abruptly came to an end, he suddenly felt a bit heavy under his eyelids and slowly fell into a coma. Before falling into a coma, the figure of the assassin queen flashed through his eyes again, but at this moment, the assassin queen was standing on a grassy field facing off against a hungry wolf. The next time Joey opened his eyes, the scene in front of him had changed. The hungry wolf, the killer queen, and the grass had all disappeared, leaving only a rudimentary house and his hands busy cooking in his eyes. In a daze, Joey fell into a coma again. In the long river of time, Joey woke up several times, but each time he only saw a brief scene and fell into a deep sleep again. However, during these brief moments of clarity, he also understood his current state. His soul is constantly absorbing the soul power of Yoshikage, and even in addition to Yoshikage, there is another soul power also being absorbed by him at the location where his soul is located. Joey estimates that that soul should be the soul of the original owner of the body he is currently in. It's just that this soul is much weaker than his and Yoshikage's soul power. Unlike him who fell into a coma, the soul of Yoshinori Yoshikage, who had been drained of his power, had been controlling his body and taking action throughout his coma, as if Yoshinori Yoshikage was unaware that his soul was gradually disappearing. This devouring state lasted for about 5 years, and finally today Joey opened his eyes and realized that he had completely adapted to his current body. He had completely devoured Yoshikage's soul. From this moment on, this unknown world will no longer have auspicious shadows, only him, Joey. Surprisingly, the assassin queen did not disappear due to the disappearance of Yoshikage's soul. Instead, it was Joey, who stayed and was devoured by Yoshikage's soul, who inherited it. Unfortunately, Joey, who devoured Yoshikage's soul, did not receive Yoshikage's memory. This made him wonder if Yoshitaka Yoshikage, like him, only appeared in this body after hearing a sharp cry. At the same time, he doesn't know how much intelligence Yoshitaka Yoshikage has collected about this world in recent years. However, from several clear observations, Joey also gained a general understanding of the environment he was in. This seems to be a rather primitive remote mountain village, and he did not see any technological products during several awakenings. Whether it was the village where Yoshitaka Yoshitaka lived or the items in his home, they were all full of primitive style. And there are still many inexplicable knowledge and images in Joey's mind. Most of this knowledge is about the language of this world, common sense of wilderness survival, some situations near villages, and even memories of some people in the village. Joey estimated that all this intelligence, knowledge, and experience should have been left by the soul of the original owner of this body. Just why can the information of this soul be transmitted, but the information of Yoshitaka's soul disappears without a trace, making Joey a bit confused. Joey shook his head, none of this was important to him now. The first thing he needs to understand when he wakes up is the situation he is currently facing. For example, now a fair and slender woman on the table in front of him breaks her hand. What a beautiful broken hand that is. The Qianqian jade finger has become extremely pale due to excessive blood loss, but it is precisely for this reason, coupled with the water droplets sprinkled by the auspicious shadow, that it looks more like a freshly peeled scallion white, tender and beautiful. Joey swallowed a mouthful of saliva and reached out to touch the cold broken hand. The cold touch, some withered skin, should be due to the owner of the broken hand dying for too long, making it feel bad to touch, as if it is not suitable for oneself. At this thought, Joey suddenly shuddered and threw the severed hand that was almost touching her face. Gudong dong, the broken hand rolled on the ground several times before stopping. Joey's face turned slightly pale. Just before Joey could think it over, a loud knock on the door interrupted his thinking. He quickly glanced at the broken hand and gave the order directly to the assassin queen to touch it and activate its ability. After the queen assassin touched the severed hand with her index finger and made the gesture of pressing her thumb, the pale severed hand disappeared silently in a burst of flames. This is one of the abilities of the killer queen, or it can also be called a way of using the first bomb. After the queen of assassins revealed her abilities, Joey also felt a little relieved. At least the queen of assassins still had her abilities, so he had a certain degree of self-protection ability. Jieyang Jieying, I know you're at home. Open the door for me. If you don't open it again, don't blame us for rushing in. Before Joey could approach the door, a man's angry roar could already be heard outside. New book release, seeking collection, recommendation, follow. Up. Please open a 1-point fan value, otherwise there will always be links to read articles. It's really speechless. Dear professional hunters, you can give a reward of 2 points per paragraph. Click on the paragraph to post this chapter, and then you can give a reward of 2 points. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. First Bomb. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 2 First Bomb. The ability of the Queen Assassin is to turn any object touched by her fingers into a bomb, and then as long as the Queen Assassin's right thumb makes a button press action, the bomb will explode. There are two forms of explosion for bombs. One is that the person who comes into contact with the bomb will be blown up, while the object that turns into a bomb is fine. The other is that the object that turns into a bomb will explode on its own. The object that turns into a bomb can choose which part to explode, and the exploded object will turn into ash, while the explosion is silent. The Assassin Queen can only create one bomb at a time, and objects that turn into bombs can only explode once. At the same time, the Assassin Empress also had a second bomb on her left hand, withering and attacking through her heart. As he walked towards the door, Joey's mind quickly flashed through the basic ability information of the Killer Queen, which is also the ability that the Killer Queen currently possesses. Just as Joey took 2 steps, the cheers outside the door turned into screams of terror amidst the noise. And that scream turned into heart-wrenching screams and panicked chaotic screams at an extremely fast pace. Something's wrong. The message popped out of my mind for the first time, but Joey's footsteps didn't stop. Instead, he accelerated a bit and rushed straight to the window. He carefully lifted a corner of the window covered with coarse cloth, and what he saw was a scene that froze him whole. A monster with a strange appearance, resembling a combination of various creatures, is constantly emerging from the forest not far from the village. At the same time, in the sky, there are monsters with insect wings constantly rushing towards the villagers who are fleeing below. Monsters are not too tall, most of them are only slightly taller and stronger than adults, but combined with their terrifying appearance and cold and brutal methods, they look exceptionally terrifying. In just a blink of an eye, the originally peaceful village had already turned into a human purgatory under the attack of more than a dozen monsters. The villagers who came to smash the door didn't know where they had gone. However, these monsters seemed to have no intention of killing all the villagers. Many villagers were directly caught by them, as if they were preparing to pack and take them away. Joey only felt his heart beating rapidly, as if there was a possibility of breaking 200 per minute. The brain is even more blank. Even though he had experienced a simple life and death battle, he couldn't quickly adapt to the cruel scene of the jungle outside. It wasn't until a roar came from the door that Joey shivered and regained his thinking. A monster has discovered him. As he turned around, Joey's gaze fell on the Assassin Queen. He took deep breaths and tried hard to calm himself down, but his body trembled uncontrollably. Gripping his trembling teeth, Joey struggled to control his body and stepped closer to the door that was being destroyed and could break at any moment. At the same time, Joey desperately tried to calm himself down and think seriously, because he knew that only in this way could he seek a glimmer of hope. Joey stopped less than 2 meters away from the door, and the Assassin Queen took the initiative to block Joey and stared at the position of the door like Joey. 2 meters, this is the maximum effective attack range of the Assassin Queen. To be more precise, it is the maximum range of activities that the Assassin Queen can leave Joey's body. As soon as Joey's side was ready, a sharp branch appeared on the wooden door, resembling the sharp blade of a praying mantis's forelimb, tough and sharp. The creaking sound came from the wooden door, making Joey's heart unable to help but accelerate again. The thumping sound is like making a sound directly in the ear. The Assassin Queen gradually approached the sickle limb that was running through the door and was preparing to withdraw, and extended her fingers to touch it. No accidents occurred, and the Killer Queen's hand easily touched the sharp joint. At that moment, Joey's heart let out a silent cry, because from now on, as long as he was willing, when he pressed the button with his right thumb, it was the time for the monster outside to die, because with the touch, the monster had become his bomb. Joey, who gradually calmed down, knew that now was not the best time to trigger an explosion. There is more than one monster outside the house. He had seen the figures of more than 10 monsters from the window before, and there may be monsters hidden in the dense forest. The best way is to introduce this monster into the room and kill it. Although according to JOJO's setting, people who are not stunt doubles cannot see stunt doubles, it has already happened to Joey that someone who is not stunt doubles has seen stunt doubles. He is not sure if anyone outside will definitely not see the existence of the assassin queen. Moreover, although the ability of the killer queen can make the opponent die silently, the light generated by the explosion during detonation cannot be hidden. At that time, the generated flames could easily attract more monster attention, so Joey is not sure if he can survive the monster's siege. But it's also unlikely for Joey to escape by hiding after wiping out this monster. Unconsciously biting his nails, Joey recalled what he had seen before and discovered a very dangerous message for him, which was that these strange monsters seemed to have some intelligence. If that's the case, it's almost impossible for companions to disappear unnoticed. So the situation that Joey quickly judged was that there were only two options in front of him. One was to kill the invading monster and escape through the back window. His previous observations made him realize that monsters appear in the nearby forest, which increases the probability of safety in the rear window position. As long as he leaves there and enters the forest to avoid them, the probability of survival will also be greatly increased. Another way is to use this house as a base and its abilities to try to annihilate all the monsters outside. In both cases, Joey made a decision without even much hesitation and ran. The number of monsters remaining in the dense forest is simply unknown. Escaping from the village is the only way for him to survive now. Otherwise, if a battle breaks out and he is discovered and waiting for him, there will be only a dead end after being besieged. However, before leaving, he still had some preparation. He had to take some things from the room, such as dry food, water, flints, weapons, ropes, and other suitable things for survival in the wild. It would be best to find a map that recorded the nearby terrain. Without these things, even if he has some experience in surviving in the wild, it will make it difficult for him to move forward after leaving the village. He also needs a bait to divert the gaze of those monsters in the air, otherwise even if he leaves the house, he has no chance to hide and be detected by the monsters in the air. Fortunately, he already has some ideas about bait, so what he is more anxious about now is to collect useful things. There wasn't much time left for him, because the monster that had split the door had already seen him in the room. Some simple household items were easily found by Joey in the kitchen, but when he opened the bedside cabinet and pulled out a cloth bag, Joey was stunned. Because the things in that cloth bag were items that he believed should not have appeared in the village, he understood. Pistol. Hand grenade. Mobile phone. Flashlight. There is also a map with many markings and a wallet made of animal skin that emits a sparkling white light in his eyes. There are several banknotes in the wallet, as well as a document-like ID card, which shows a handsome young man wearing a white combat suit and holding an assault rifle with black hair. Below the proof photo is written Joey's previous name, Yoshitaka Yoshikage. What is the situation? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Withering Heart-Piercing Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Withering Heart-Piercing Attack. Bang. The door finally broke open under the monster's continuous efforts. Just before the excited monster rushed towards Joey, the assassin queen standing behind him simply pressed the long-prepared thumb. In the flames, the monster's entire body shattered into flames and disappeared. At this moment, Joey also shifted his gaze away from the small map. He saw a country name that existed in his memory on the map, and then connected with the monsters that had broken into the village. Joey suddenly had a clear understanding of his location. Full-time hunter. This can be said to be Joey's favorite anime, so he remembers some of its settings quite well. For example, the name representing his country on the map, NGL Autonomous Country. NGL stands for Neo Green Life, which means green and new life. The whole country has fully followed this concept and is in an environmental protection mode that abandons mechanical civilization and maintains natural life. According to records, 99% of the citizens in this country are people who advocate nature. They have long been accustomed to the life of men farming and women weaving without technology, where they work from sunrise to sunset. The remaining 1% are volunteers from all over the world who come to NGL to serve environmental protection concepts and engage in activities that support and uphold NGL's environmental protection philosophy. However, Joey was even more aware that the personnel ratio was ultimately recorded on paper for people to see, but the real situation was that beneath the surface of NGL's reverence for nature and environmental protection, there was a malicious intent against the entire world. The oral anesthetic D2, which is popular worldwide, flows out of this country, and 80% of its manufacturing materials, such as Byra trees, grow in this closed country. And regarding the patchwork monster now appearing in front of Joey, he also recognized their race and origin. Chimeric ant, a first-level designated quarantine species from the Dark Continent, with a comprehensive evaluation of danger level B. Its special feeding and mating reproduction method allows it to evolve and reproduce at an extremely fast speed in the presence of abundant and diverse food. However, based on the current situation analysis, it should still be the time for the queen ant to survive, otherwise there would not be a large number of chimeric ants invading the village and catching people. In an instant, Joey's mind was filled with a plethora of thoughts. The world he traveled through, the timeline he woke up in, and even some of the events that were about to happen in this country and the world, all had some thoughts in Joey's mind. But now is not the time to ponder these things deeply, so Joey shook off the chaotic thoughts in his mind, quickly stuffed the wallet-emitting white light into his pocket, then took out the pistol player Lay's phone map and set it aside. He stuffed a few pancakes and collected some essential items into a cloth bag, wrapped them up, grabbed the nearby pistol on his back, grabbed his phone and map, grabbed the grenade, and rushed towards the back window of the house with a swift step. Joey, who looked out the window and didn't see any monsters, didn't jump out directly. Instead, he turned his head and looked at the killer queen again. I saw a skull-shaped tank suddenly detach from the back of the killer queen's left hand. This is the second bomb of the assassin queen, the withered heart-piercing attack. A small tank, one size smaller than a volleyball, left 2 rows of track marks on the ground and shouted loudly, "Roast chicken is coming. Show me here." He rushed out along the door that was previously broken open by the sickle-embedded ant. The sound of the car was very loud, but Joey didn't notice any abnormal behavior of the ants when they saw the car from the door, as if they couldn't hear the sound of the car. The setting that suits most stunt doubles, which only stunt messengers can see, should still be useful in this world. The car leisurely ran to a chimeric ant near the house while analyzing and observing Joey, and suddenly exploded while shouting. Boom! A huge explosion echoed directly outside the house, accompanied by black smoke and dazzling flames. However, in the smoke and dust, the car was intact and rushed out again, shouting loudly. The withered heart-piercing attack is a single-shot bomb tank that automatically tracks the heat source. It will explode when approaching the target, and the power of its explosion is proportional to the size of the target's heat. At the same time, the explosion is harmless to the tank itself, so it can explode multiple times to attack the target. And the tank itself is extremely sturdy and cannot be destroyed by ordinary attacks. It can be said that it is currently the most suitable attack method in Joey's hands to attract attention and eliminate chimeric ants. However, Joey did not pay much attention to the damage caused by the tank, and at the first moment of the explosion, he squeezed out of the back window of the room. Looking up, I indeed saw the figure of flying chimeric ants above the house. Fortunately, as he calculated, the chimeric ants in the air were attracted by the sudden explosion, which gave Joey a chance to dodge. After standing firm, he took a quick step and hid in the shadow of the eaves. At this moment, a second explosion suddenly sounded, accompanied by the hissing of chimeric ants. Joey, who had been observing the movement of the flying ants above his head, could clearly see that 2 flying ants had carefully observed several times before their wings shook and leaned towards the direction of the explosion. At this time, the small tank had already heard the 5th explosion. Joey was overjoyed and didn't dare to linger. In the moment when the ants flew away, he shook off his steps and rushed towards the forest behind the house, which was less than 100 meters away from him. At the same time, he tightly held the pistol in his hand, and if he found anything wrong, even at the risk of complete exposure, he would pull the trigger or throw a grenade at a critical moment. However, with the sixth explosion, Joey's worried situation did not arise, and he calmly rushed into the forest. However, he dared not relax at all, as he had no way of judging whether there would be chimeric ants in the forest. But the explosions in the rear village became increasingly dense. After the sixth explosion, there were 3 consecutive roars. The chimeric ants seemed to be in conflict with the small tanks, but logically they can't see the small tanks. Is it necessary to force them? Joey's mind was filled with thoughts of doubt. But it is not possible to retrieve the released tanks in a short period of time. Joey's order to the tank was to destroy all the chimeric ants in the village. This command is very vague, and even Joey has some doubts in his heart whether the small tank can perfectly understand it. After all, Joey has never measured the temperature of the chimeric ant, and even when Joey released the tank, he prepared for the situation where the tank exploded and killed the captured villagers. After all, in this life and death struggle, he cannot even determine his own safety, and how can he manage those captured villagers? However, judging from the first explosion, the temperature of the chimeric ants should not be too low. After pursing her slightly dry lips and the fine sweat seeping from her forehead, Joey focused more energy on the potential risks of her abilities and the next escape route. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I Want to Live. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I Want to Live. There are 2 ways to recover the tanks released by the withered heart-piercing attack. One is to self-return after completing the command, and the other is to require Joey to retrieve them if the task cannot be completed. If the chimeric ants don't know how to read, then Joey is not worried about the tanks not being able to be recycled. Killing the chimeric ants in the village is likely only a matter of time for the tanks. Even if a clever ant can detect the attack pattern of a tank, it is impossible to stop the tank's attack without special means. Once the chimeric ants withdraw from the village, the tank's mission is considered complete and will return directly to Joey's hands. If the chimeric ant can use the mind, then Joey's released tank will become the best means of restraint, even if the final result may come at the cost of paying with one left hand, then Joey can accept it. After all, the danger levels of chimeric ants who can recite and chimeric ants who cannot recite are completely different. And even if my hands are gone, there is still a way to regrow in this world, but if my life is gone, it's really gone. Carefully walking through the forest, Joey wiped the sweat off his forehead again, but his brow furrowed involuntarily. The consumption of physical strength is incorrect. Although he had just mastered this body, Joey had already had a basic understanding of its condition. Running for hundreds of meters, even with immense psychological pressure, should not have caused him much exertion. How could it be like now, with sweat on his forehead and a noticeable decrease in physical strength? There must be something wrong. Boom. The explosion sounded like an alarm to remind Joey to wake him up instantly. Is it related to the explosion of withered heart-piercing attacks? Joey had long known that doubles attacks were not unfounded, they required the consumption of so-called doubles energy. And Joey always thought this energy was spiritual power. After all, doubles are inherently spiritual products, and it is reasonable to consume the mental power of the substitute envoy during battles. Especially when he thought about the ability of the Platinum Star in JOJO 6 Sea of Stones, which others couldn't use due to lack of mental energy, Joey became even more certain that doubles would consume mental energy. But now the continuous explosions have also exhausted his physical strength, which makes him have to rethink the issue of substitute energy. In the manga, there is no sign of physical exhaustion in the use of Yoshitaka Yoshikage's abilities, which makes Joey have to carefully consider whether there has been any physical exhaustion in the battles of other characters in the anime. Joey, who was frowning and contemplating, suddenly remembered in the fifth golden experience that Bugatti was using steel chain fingers to fight against people, as if both sides were experiencing physical exhaustion. There seems to have been instances of wheezing during the use of the 6th installment by Taro. Although the memory may be a bit blurry, it's not really a priority for Joey now. The inclusion of physical strength in the substitute energy may be a good intelligence, but now it will only make Joey feel uncomfortable. After all, the withered heart-piercing attack has certain uncontrollable factors. If left to explode continuously, it would be a blow to Joey's mental and physical strength. And if calculated in this way, the appearance of the Assassin Queen will also consume his physical and mental strength. But now he dare not put away the Assassin Queen at all. It can be said that this sudden physical exhaustion is a double blow to Joey. Even though Joey feels in good condition now, there is still a feeling of unease in his heart. I don't know how many chimeric ants still exist in the village, and I don't know what kind of situation the withered and heart-piercing attack tank is facing now. Continuing to explode will only consume his stamina more and more. According to this situation, perhaps with dozens or hundreds of more explosions, he will face a situation where his stamina is exhausted and he can't run, and it will be dangerous in this forest. Even if the tank can't come back after running out of stamina, what will it cost to continue exploding? Or will the tank stop exploding? Various negative thoughts flooded Joey's mind in an instant. Joey unconsciously raised his hand to bite his nails, but was awakened by a grenade in his hand. He put down his arm and took a few deep breaths to suppress the hint of fear that had risen in his heart. Joey forced himself to calm down, but things hadn't developed to such a bad level yet. Firstly, if there were no major accidents, the number of chimeric ants in the village would not be enough to withstand dozens of tank explosions. Secondly, even if the worst-case scenario occurs, Joey can still make a gecko-like decision at the most critical moment, cutting off his left hand to retain his strength while fully unleashing the withered heart-piercing attack. Even if this decision is very difficult for someone like him who grew up in peace, as long as the Assassin Queen executes orders and extends her hand voluntarily, it should still be possible to do so. Constantly building himself in his mind, Joey's footsteps forward unconsciously became even more determined. He wants to survive. In this moment, living became Joey's only belief in his heart. Joey clenched the gun tightly in his hand. Although this thing brought him a certain sense of security, it also made him feel a bit uneasy. At this age, it was the first time he had touched a gun in reality, although he had already opened the safety of the pistol and tried to load the bullet according to his limited knowledge. If there is really a dangerous situation, Joey knows it's better not to place too much hope on the pistol. Starting from holding the pistol, Joey couldn't help but think of the scene in the anime where Pence died at the muzzle, which made his nerves even more tense. Unconsciously, sweat oozed from his palms, and Joey's beautiful eyebrows furrowed into a figure 8. He carefully withdrew the sweat-soaked grenade as he walked forward, took out the map, and began to compare and judge. His wilderness survival experience has made him more sensitive to direction, and he can also judge his approximate position by comparing some nearby details with vague memories. This is considered good news for the moment. However, there are not many locations marked on the map. 3 villages located nearby and 1 organizational base located nearby are all the useful information recorded on the map. There are not many places that Joey can choose, and it can even be said that they are single. After all, there is no need to go to the nearby villages. These places are now targets for the predatory prey of chimeric ants, and the only option is the organization's base. Even if it has already been discovered by the chimeric ants, there are still many more villages in the base that can provide him with assistance, whether it is weapons, more complete maps, or even some intelligence information about NGL, which can only exist in the base. As for Joey's memories of NGL in his mind, they are more about things in the general direction, which is not enough in such a situation where details need to be filled in to get a chance to escape. Otherwise, he might have found a way out by bowing his head and rushing towards the east. Anyway, according to the geographical situation of NGL in memory, the east borders another country under normal technology. But if he really went so recklessly, Joey probably wouldn't be able to run far and would just dive straight into the ant's nest. Upon careful analysis of the current situation, Joey is more inclined to find the protagonist group, namely Kate, Jay, and Kiyoshi, who came to NGL to investigate the situation of the chimeric ants, in order to leave NGL together. I just don't know if my luck is good enough, so is the nearby base where Kate took people to go. Another question is whether the idea may be too simplistic. After all, this is an NGL autonomous country that is not easy to enter and exit. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. About chimeric ants. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 about chimeric ants. As Joey moved forward, memories of the comic plot kept flashing through his mind. Just a full-time hunter, after all, is an old fan. If it weren't for the anime being remade and the rumors of the old thief preparing to resume publication before his time traveling, perhaps he wouldn't have remembered the plot long ago. But that's how it has been several years since he traveled, and if he can still recall most of the details in the anime, it's really a ghost. But fortunately, Joey still remembers some famous scenes, basic settings, and general plot. For example, Ping Si was bitten by a head explosion, and Bao Qiu'er was caught and let ants eat it. Nian also knew about Nian's existence. Kate received a message with blood and took people to a base, where she encountered chimeric ants and engaged in battle. Subsequently, Kate and her team were besieged after leaving the base. In the end, King's direct guard Naifapido appeared and engaged in a fight with Kate, while Kiyoshi, under Kate's cover, knocked out Shao Jie, who was about to go berserk and fled. As for the upcoming plot, Joey didn't continue to ponder, but instead looked at the phone he had just turned on in his hand. The flip phone in the shape of a beetle is probably the most recommended phone by Leo in anime. It has a long standby time, good call signal, is not expensive, and is also very durable. It seems that Yoshiteru has a good eye and praised her in her heart. However, Joey, who was searching for her phone, did not find any useful information in it. The phone book has no record of any phone numbers. There were no text messages, but all the bills and advertisements related to payment reminders were completely deleted. There is no record of any last-minute calls, and there is not a single photo. If it weren't for a flicker in the signal display on the phone, Joey would suspect that this phone doesn't even have a SIM card, it's just a new one. As for other functions, Joey was clearly showcased on this simple phone, including the compass, alarm clock, blank notepad, recording, camera, calendar, and snake. Joey, who had no idea who to call, checked the time on his phone and then put it back into his arms. The battery of the phone is very sufficient, and it is also good for him to use it as a watch or flashlight, let alone being able to record videos. The distant explosion could no longer be heard a few minutes ago, and the excess energy consumption had also stopped recently. It seems that either the tank has completed its mission and is on its way back, or the tank has been delayed. The fact that an explosion consumes energy unexpectedly demonstrates some advantages, and from the fact that there is no discomfort transmitted from the hands, it seems that the tank has not been damaged. Just thinking about the strength of the tank, Joey took it for granted. After all, it was an existence that could not be shattered by a platinum star. Ordinary attacks may not leave any trace on the tank, so he naturally won't have any feeling on his hands. But it's no use thinking so much. It's more realistic for him to expect the tank to return soon. Calculating the time from leaving the village to now, he has been walking through the forest for more than 10 minutes. Regardless of whether the tank can eliminate the chimeric ants in the village or not, if any unexpected chimeric ants are found in the village, they will report the death of the chimeric ants. It is likely that the chimeric ants who will come to the village to investigate will be at the level of division leaders. Those guys are not comparable to the chimeric ant soldiers of mixed fish. So if Joey wants to be safe, it's better to run some distance before it gets dark. Once nightfall, this forest will definitely become the home ground of chimeric ants that integrate a large amount of biological abilities. The unique feeding and mating habits of chimeric ants destine their evolution to become extremely terrifying without being restricted. As the name suggests, the queen of chimeric ants only needs to shoot enough food and does not require male and female mating to give birth to offspring. And these offspring will also inherit the characteristics of the queen's food-eating creatures. In other words, the more diverse the variety of food, the more diverse the genes of the offspring of chimeric ants. At the same time, only queens and ant kings in the population have the right to reproduce offspring, which also leads to the extremely greedy, belligerent, and aggressive personality of chimeric ants. The division of labor of chimeric ants is also very clear. The queen of chimeric ants will constantly migrate to find satisfactory locations, during which time it will increase the number of soldier ants and build a loyal army. Only when the satisfactory location is found will it stop and give birth to a large number of construction worker ants. These construction workers' ants will quickly build a nest that satisfies the queen, and then the queen will survive in the nest until death. However, during this period, the queen will give birth to an ant king every cycle. Ant kings do not stay in their nests for long. After birth, they will take their immediate guards and leave the wandering world, mating with various species to produce the next generation of queens. In this process, the class division of chimeric ants is extremely clear. Under the ant king is the direct guard prepared by the queen for it. After the ant king and the direct guard team leave, under the queen is the division leader. These division leaders have clear division of labor and lead a large number of core leaders, namely superior ants and ordinary soldiers, namely subordinate ants. The situation Joey is currently facing is that the chimeric ant queen, who has found a place to live and built a nest, is plundering the nearby creatures for the breeding of the next generation of ant kings. And because the current queen of chimeric ants has consumed a large number of humans, its subsequent production of chimeric ants has gained intelligence. What Joey has to face is a group of intelligent and different biological abilities of chimeric ant pursuers, which is both unpleasant and terrifying to think of. Creak, creak, creak. The sound of the withered and piercing attack chariot traveling from far to near came from behind Joey, causing him to stop in his tracks. Then Joey saw the tank that had left a row of track marks in the forest quickly charging towards him. The queen assassin stood up at the right time and poked out her left hand, while the tank swooshed into a blue light that flashed into the queen assassin's left back. However, Joey's face didn't look very good as he looked at the thin marks on the two tracks. The return of the tank proved that all the chimeric ants within the village had been eliminated, but the two marks left by the tank's return actually exposed his whereabouts. Joey is not sure if there will be chimeric ants hiding nearby, tracking the tracks all the way in the dark, but all he can do now is to get away from here as soon as possible. Turning around, Joey tightened his backpack and quickened his pace a bit. Joey, who had just walked a certain distance away from the village with his back, had completely formed an H-shaped eyebrow because he saw the gesture of the assassin queen beside him, which was a clear indication that there were chimeric ants behind him. Damn it! Sure enough, it was exposed. Joey didn't feel surprised in his heart, and even his deliberate turn to expose his back was somewhat enticing to potential pursuers attacking him. But judging from the choice of the tracker, Joey had some bad guesses in his heart. Is the other party not taking action because they are too cautious, or can they see the killer queen? If it's the former, that's okay, but if it's the latter, then things will be troublesome. And no matter what, Joey must deal with the pursuer as soon as possible, otherwise there is such a monster hanging. Once the other party's support arrives, no matter how many means he has, death will be inevitable. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Walking Through the Forest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Walking through the forest. Joey didn't rush to make any unnecessary movements, but continued to maintain his rhythm as he walked through the forest. It's not difficult for Joey to get rid of the rear chimeric ant, as he quickly came up with several methods while walking through the forest. Regardless of whether the other party will take action first or not, he will solve the other party in a short period of time, because according to the markings on the map, he will continue to move forward for about half an hour and approach a village. In the current situation, Joey dare not gamble whether the village has been invaded by chimeric ants. After carefully reviewing the map again, Joey put it back into his arms and reached out to poke into the bundle behind him. After hesitating for a moment, he took out a bamboo tube with a small arm length from his bundle. This was the bamboo tube he used to hold water, and it was also the most suitable item in his bundle for the current situation. After continuing for a distance, Joey suddenly stopped under a tall tree and carefully observed the surroundings before hiding his bamboo tube in a pile of rubble under the tree. Then he confirmed once again that there was nothing nearby before turning around and running towards the forest. And just half a minute after Joey left, a bee-shaped monster with wings as thin as cicada wings, a bee-like head, four-jointed arms, two slender hind legs, and a bulging abdomen appeared under the tree where Joey had previously hidden things, with purple sharp spines at the end of his abdomen. Its large, pitch-black eyes carefully scanned under the big tree several times, and only then did it focus on the bamboo tube after confirming that there were no traps. The bee chimeric ant carefully leaned forward and extended one arm to grab the bamboo tube. The moment he touched the bamboo tube with his fingertips, it exploded suddenly. The bee chimeric ant was instantly torn apart by an explosion. The first bomb of the killer queen, capable of turning any object touched into a bomb and exploding at the moment the enemy touches the bomb. Obviously, the bamboo tube left by Joey had unknowingly been touched by him and turned into a bomb. As long as the ant that had been monitoring him became curious about the bamboo tube and touched it, the one waiting for the ant was an explosion. After leaving for about half a minute, Joey did not receive any feedback from the killer queen. Instead, he suddenly felt a momentary disappearance of some of his physical strength, which made him know that his battle had been successful. After a moment of hesitation, Joey turned around and walked back. He didn't go very far originally, but he had to be careful and vigilant all the time, so the speed of his return was not fast. About a minute later, Joey reappeared at a distance from the big tree. He saw the broken body of the bee chimera ant from a distance, but it seemed to have not completely died yet, with some remnants wriggling on the ground. As a result, the killer queen behind Joey's left back slightly wriggled and the tank fell to the ground. The trajectory of the tracks left 2 marks on the ground, and the arrogant words echoed through the forest. The next second, the tank suddenly exploded as it approached the chimeric ant. The broken body of the chimeric ant was once again thrown away, but by the time it fell, it had become completely torn apart. The skull tank made a deep sound at the mouth and, after making some judgment, turned around and raced back. Joey pursed his lips to suppress the feeling of vomiting, then glanced again at the scattered ant corpses and the intact bamboo tubes in the distance. He didn't get close to retrieve them, turned around, and disappeared into the forest. The bamboo tube bomb did not kill the opponent, which was somewhat unexpected for Joey. He had the idea of killing the assassin queen when he let her touch the bamboo tube, but the result was that the explosion took away some of his energy but did not fulfill his expectations. The reason is worth pondering. Is it a bomb that has limited stamina every time it draws? Is there a limit to the power of the bomb in that case? Or is it that he felt in his heart that the explosion of outputting these stamina was enough to kill the chimeric ants, and subconsciously restricted the output of stamina? Or is it that the chimeric ant took action before the explosion, causing the explosion that should have killed the other party to fail to produce the desired effect? There is too little data, and Joey currently cannot determine the reason why the chimeric ants did not die immediately from the explosion. However, he is not in a hurry. As long as he escapes alive this time, he will have plenty of time to study his own abilities, and then he will figure out the doubles, physical strength, and mental state. About half an hour after Joey left, several chimeric ants appeared at the scene of bee chimeric ant death. One of the chimeric ants with a dog head raised its nose a few times before pointing in the direction of Joey's departure. Then, a few chimeric ants chased after the ground without looking too much at the broken meat. At this moment, although Joey was unaware of the approaching chimeric ants behind him, he glanced at the time on his phone and felt a sense of urgency in his heart. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it would take at least 3 or 4 hours for him to arrive from the base. This time is a bit tight, and I just hope there won't be any problems halfway through. Otherwise, if he can't reach the base even after dark, it will be dangerous. After running out for less than half an hour, Joey passed by the village marked on the map. From a distance, looking towards the village from the hillside, there was no sign of any villagers. On the contrary, many houses in the village had collapsed, indicating that there had been a previous attack by chimeric ants. Seeing this, Joey's heart felt a bit heavy, but at the same time, he became even more guarded. As he continued to run, Joey gradually experienced the danger of deep mountains and forests. This area, which has always adhered to the concept of natural environmental protection, is not only threatened by chimeric ants, but also by a large number of unrecorded wild animals and poisonous insects. Even though Joey has some wilderness survival experience, he still needs to be 200% careful when moving forward in this environment, which inevitably slows down his speed. As Joey watched the sun above her head gradually set in the west, her heart couldn't help but become increasingly anxious. Being anxious in such an environment would not provide him with any help, and it would even make him more dangerous. If it weren't for the assassin Empress constantly following him, he might have been injured and stopped walking in this forest. However, after continuing for over an hour, Joey slowly slowed down because his nose was filled with a smell of blood, and many human corpses appeared in his field of vision. These corpses are all wearing white combat uniforms, and are surrounded by firearms and other weapons. Obviously, these people are not ordinary villagers of NGL, but rather staff members belonging to the organization. There is still about an hour's journey from the organization base here, but the tracks of chimeric ants have already appeared. It is highly likely that the organization has already been under attack or occupied. Overall, the situation ahead is somewhat pessimistic. Joey looked up at the sky again, and it was almost 6 o'clock. He had been walking through the forest for nearly 3 hours in a row. Even though a stream was found during this period to replenish water and food, Joey still felt a deep sense of exhaustion as she maintained the presence of the Killer Queen and occasionally even used her abilities. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Unknown Wallet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Unknown Wallet. Normally, he was a bit hesitant to keep the assassin queen outside and monitor the situation in the vicinity more than an hour ago. Spiritual strength is not bad, it seems that it is because Joey's soul has devoured the Yanagi shadow in his original soul, making his mental strength very strong. But in terms of physical strength, this body is a bit lacking. It's not that it's weak. If we change the scene, with the current physical fitness, Joey can even laugh out of his dreams. This is several times stronger than his original body, with 8 abdominal muscles. If it weren't for this, Joey would have been exhausted and paralyzed by the frequency of releasing the ability to kill the Emperor and use it since his death. By comparison, Joey felt that if he had taken the hunter exam of Xiaojia and his class, he would have been able to easily run a 4-hour marathon with the big team. However, this comparison also reveals how much physical energy is consumed by using stunt doubles. He only ran for over an hour before sweating and breathing heavily. Although he hasn't reached his limit yet, continuing to traverse the forest in this state will increase the danger exponentially. Joey couldn't help feeling a bit discouraged in his heart. If he hadn't been asleep for a few years and had discovered that this was the world of full-time hunters earlier, he would definitely have strengthened his exercise to become stronger. But it's not right either. If he had known his location earlier, he would have run away without a trace. How could he have stayed at NGL and become an ordinary office worker of an anesthesia organization? Just as Joey had to stop to rest and adjust, the suspicious wallet that had been held in his arms, emitting strange white light, suddenly had an unexpected effect. Joey felt a warm breath continuously pouring into his body from the wallet. At that moment, he thought of a word, golden finger. Apart from the golden finger, he also thought of a possibility, which is whether there is a problem with this wallet, whether it is the backhand of Yoshitaka Yoshikage or any potential danger. When this judgment was born in his mind, Joey pulled out his wallet and threw it to the ground, instantly severing the feeling of connected breath. The wallet still emitted a sparkling white light on the ground. Joey's gaze fell on the wallet with an intuition that it was not dangerous for him. At the same time, the white light emanating from the wallet gave Joey a genuine sense of familiarity, as if he had touched the scent emanating from the wallet somewhere before. That's right, it's just breath. He felt the breath of life only in that wallet. Did you say it? Joey frowned earnestly, suddenly remembering why he felt familiar with the scent emanating from the wallet. At the beginning of his journey, he briefly saw a scene before falling into a coma due to his victory in attacking the soul of Yoshinori Yoshikage. A scene of the assassin queen and a hungry wolf confronting each other, and it is in that scene that Joey's perspective still has some things that he had previously overlooked. Among them is a strange creature that emits a sparkling white light between the assassin queen and the hungry wolf, and besides that creature, there seem to be some corpses of humans and beasts in that picture. When Joey looked at it, it was precisely when the creature's strange head, which looked like a cicada pupa, fell to the ground. However, at that time, it seemed to have a disgusting mouth full of sharp teeth. Joey felt that the reason why he chose to forget it was probably due to its unique and ugly appearance. Thinking of this, Joey suddenly had an association. As he traveled, he was very certain that he had heard a strange piercing sound. Did that sound come from the disgusting mouth of this unique little creature? So what is the reason why Yoshitaka Yoshikage peeled off the skin of this thing and made it into a wallet? And what exactly is this strange creature? Joey unconsciously gnawed his nails again. Why did Jiliang put his wallet in the cabinet? Why does this eerie wallet make you feel close? What is the matter with the chi it outputs towards its own body? Yoshitaka Yoshio must have known or discovered something. So what should I do now? After hesitating, Joey picked up the wallet. No matter what secret it was hiding, as long as it didn't cause immediate harm to himself, Joey was ready to rely on the wallet's help to leave the forest and rush to the base. This is actually a trade-off. The crisis of staying in the forest is even greater, and there is a possibility of being chased and killed at any time, so the two harms should be taken lightly. Not long after picking up the wallet, the gas on it wrapped around Joey again and penetrated into his body. As the gas penetrated, Joey clearly felt a boost in his spirit and his physical strength slowly recovered. It's like the breath conveyed to him by the wallet contains a strong vitality. And Joey also found that this aura perfectly matched him, as if it came from the soul. However, this discovery did not make Joey happy, but rather furrowed his arched eyebrows. With the help of his wallet, Joey's expenditure and recovery gradually reached a balance. Without using his bomb ability, his physical expenditure was controlled to a certain extent, which allowed him to persist until now. Even so, Joey is almost reaching her limit now. However, during this period, Joey noticed that the white light emanating from the wallet was gradually decreasing, and it seemed that the gas present in the wallet was not infinite. He just didn't know what would happen when all of this gas was absorbed by him. Joey always felt that it was better not to try in the forest or out of danger. He also believes in this feeling, so if given the opportunity, he would immediately separate his wallet from himself. Although the help of the wallet relieved Joey's exhaustion, the continuous hours of tense vigilance and escape still left him mentally exhausted. With a deep sigh, Joey endured nausea and discomfort and examined the bodies on the ground. Although he didn't understand autopsy, there was still a slight warmth on the nearby bodies, which made Joey know that these people wouldn't die for too long. Joey, who understood this, dared not retract the assassin queen. His eyes scanned around with caution, and he bent down to pick up a seemingly intact submachine gun and a pistol before quickly hiding in the shade of nearby trees. The soldier's death time is not long, and it is very likely that there will be chimeric ants lingering nearby. The tired nerves tightened again, while guarding the nearby area and checking the weapons in his hand, Joey's mind was thinking about the way forward. There is not much time until dark, and even many areas with lush trees in the forest have begun to become dark. Continuing forward, Joey knew he had a high chance of hitting the leaving chimeric ant. And if they stay, he doesn't know if there will be pursuers behind, and it's also unknown whether there will be chimeric ants returning nearby. After all, these corpses are also considered good food for them. The rifle in hand should still be intact, and there are still quite a few bullets left. Moreover, from the many remains of chimeric ant corpses left nearby, it can still cause considerable damage to chimeric ants. Joey, who had put away his rifle, glanced at the killer queen and paused as he reached for the pistol. He then removed the magazine he had picked up, which should be of the same model as his own pistol, and looked at it before putting it back away again. Later, Joey reached out and touched the map in his arms. In a dilemma, he hoped to find some alternative ways out on the map. It's just that there are no special places besides forests nearby, which makes Joey reluctantly put away the map again. He decided to continue his journey to the base before it was completely dark, and even if it was dark, he would try his best to reach the base. The danger in the wilderness is too great for him. The Assassin Queen's ability that he relies on now can only exert a greater advantage in indoor environments. Once surrounded in such an open position, he has too few means to fight. As for physical strength, biting your teeth and squeezing can always squeeze out some. With a decision, Joey was ready to leave the shadow of the trees, but just as he stepped out of his body and was in a tense state from resting to about to leave, a bloody beast claw suddenly swung down from the trunk above his head towards his head. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Quick Kill Assault. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Quick Kill X Assault. Judging from the sharpness of the beast's claws, if they were firmly grasped, they would definitely leave a fatal wound on Joey's head in an instant. But before the beast's claws could fall, a fist landed first on the beast's claws. The powerful punch force drove the beast's claws to deviate from their position and grab into the air, followed by a sudden clattering of gunfire in the forest. Joey aimed his rifle at the chimeric ant that was hit by a stunt double and launched an attack. The bullet pierced through the body of the chimeric ant and broke the tree trunk where it was located. Before the chimeric ant and the tree trunk fell together, Joey flew out to avoid its coverage. At the same time, I also caught a glimpse of the face of the hidden killer. That is a grotesque ant with a face similar to that of an ape. Even if one falls from a tree dead, the ants still exude a fierce aura in their eyes, making them feel a bit chilly. However, his head had already been pierced by bullets and it was obvious that he couldn't survive, so Joey didn't continue to linger on the other person's body for a second. Instead, he got up and quickly deflected the muzzle of the gun, strafing towards another location where the flames suddenly appeared. I saw a chimeric ant with a dog's head exploding and flying there. At the same time, the withered heart-piercing chariot was roaring towards the distant dense forest. Obviously, there are hidden chimeric ants in the dense forest. Joey's bullet swept over the body of the dog-headed chimeric ant, and his gaze chased towards the direction of the tank, but he did not find any chimeric ant figures. However, at this moment, a black shadow suddenly shot out of the bushes slightly away from his body, with extremely fast speed. The assassin Empress discovered the opponent at the first time, but had no time to launch an attack to stop him, so she could only bend her arm and block Joey's side. The tremendous impact force made the assassin queen take several steps back and hit Joey directly. The sudden situation even made Joey, who had a slow reaction, stumble and fall directly to the ground. The rifle in his hand slipped out, but fortunately it was tied with a shoulder strap and he was not thrown far away. However, it caused a pain in Joey's rib area. At the same time, he also felt a burning pain in his right arm at this moment, indicating that the opponent's sudden impact had caused damage to the blocking double. The damage suffered by the substitute will also be reflected in the body, so Joey also felt the pain in his arm at the first time. Of course, the damage of the body also affects the substitute in the first place, but unless it is a physical damage, the substitute will not show much damage and will not be affected by most injuries. However, Joey, who fell to the ground, also took advantage of this to see the assassin queen blocking the attacker. That is a chimeric ant that clumps up like a watermelon bug, and its attack method is a rolling raid similar to a tire. At this moment it was unexpectedly blocked by the assassin queen, and there was a noticeable pause in its movements, obviously due to the confusion caused by the inability to see the presence of the double. But this did not delay its rapid adjustment. Several seemingly weak legs suddenly protruded from both sides of its carapace, and with a swipe on the ground, the legs rolled to the side with its tire-like body before the assassin queen swung her fist. Boom! The explosion of the tank came from a distance, and Joey, who barely stood up from the ground, saw the watermelon bug adjust its direction and accelerate towards him again. Quickly pulling out the pistol, Joey aimed at the incoming ants and emptied the magazine. Although a few of them were crooked, there were still a few that were firmly knotted into the rolling body of the chimeric ant. The damage from bullets seems insufficient to take away the life of the chimeric ant, but instead becomes a tool to stimulate its frenzy, making it roll faster and more ferocious. At the same time, Joey also heard the second explosion of the tank in his ear. It is obvious that there was a problem with the tank's attack, but it is unclear whether the opponent discovered the track marks or used other means. But Joey temporarily ignored the hidden chimeric ant. As the watermelon insect chimeric ant rolled in, he suddenly threw away his pistol and threw himself towards the side. At the same time, as he made a save, the assassin queen aimed her fist at the side of the rolling watermelon bug. Bang! The attack mode presented a straight and forward movement, and at the same time, the watermelon insect knot of the assassin queen was not visible. Despite barely rolling out a certain distance, it still fell to the ground. The Killer Queen is a close-range power stunt double, and her destructive panel data has reached level A. The flipping watermelon insect chimeric ant stretched out and curled up on the ground, wanting to get up, but as soon as it opened its body, a round object rolled into its multi-legged embrace. Boom! Explosions followed one after another. The grenade carried by Joey finally came in handy at this moment. The whole body of the watermelon beetle was blasted out by a grenade, and its soft abdomen and a large number of legs were already unrecognizable and scattered all over the ground under the explosion. But even so, the insects that landed on the ground still made uncomfortable noises and struggled to wriggle their bodies in an attempt to stand up again. Joey, who had already stood up when he threw the grenade, didn't rush to make the final blow. Instead, he turned around and looked at the flames generated by another explosion in the forest. This is already the fourth explosion of the skull tank. Looking at the tank charging out again, Joey couldn't help but squint his eyes. The last remaining chimeric ant is difficult to deal with. This thought flashed through Joey's mind as he turned around and ignored the still chasing skeleton tank and struggling watermelon beetle, running towards another direction where the trees were not particularly dense. Just before leaving, his fingers quietly touched a big tree beside him. The next second, Joey's figure flashed and disappeared into the forest. In fact, when Joey was counting the bullets, he received a reminder from the Killer Queen that there were chimeric ants appearing. 2 chimeric ants avoided Joey's warning direction and were exposed to the double's field of vision, and one of them quietly lurked over. Although it's a bit regrettable for Joey that he can't share the perspective of a stunt double, there are many stunt doubles in the anime that can share the perspective with stunt doubles. But fortunately, the assassin queen is not a fool and can understand his meaning and provide him with timely feedback. This gave Joey enough time to make arrangements, especially when the Killer Queen's blatant observation was not detected, which gave Joey confidence to confirm that the appearing chimeric ants were neither powerful chimeric ants nor the presence of a substitute. However, Joey did not act rashly. Instead, he secretly adjusted the angle of his rifle so that he could fight back at the first time. At the same time, he quietly released the withered heart-piercing attack. This led to the situation where monkeys and dog-headed chimeric ants were instantly killed later on. The appearance of watermelon worms and the unknown chimeric ant later did not exceed Joey's expectations, but it also exceeded his expectations. What didn't go beyond was that Joey guessed that the other person wasn't just 2, maybe there were a few hidden in the dimly lit forest. Beyond that, there is the intensity and suddenness of the watermelon insect raid, as well as the difficulty of the unknown chimeric ants facing tank attacks. Even if the tank explodes all the way, it seems that it cannot cause damage to the hidden guy. But fortunately, after such a long battle, Joey was able to determine that there were only 4 chimeric ants nearby. This quantity is still within his acceptable range after he quickly resolved 2.5. If there were 1 or 2 more, Joey might be in a life-threatening situation when hit by a watermelon bug. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Calculation of Accidents. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Calculation X Accidents. Joey, who left, did not run far, but hid in a thicket and carefully observed the big tree he had touched, as well as the explosion that came closer to him after a slight pause in the distance. Obviously, the hidden chimeric ant had been keeping an eye on Joey and chased after him after discovering he had escaped. Joey's mouth curved slightly. He is not afraid of the other party chasing after him. He is only afraid that if the other party does not chase after him, he will deliberately hang the tank. And through previous simple observations, Joey has determined the opponent's movement, just like the macaque chimeric ant preparing to sneak attack him, both climbing and jumping between trees. Intentionally running in a direction with relatively sparse trees, although it is equivalent to telling the other party, I have found the key to dodging tank attacks. But Joey has no choice. Whether it's setting traps or really trying to avoid the opponent's pursuit, this is his optimal solution, and the key is whether the opponent is deceived or not. Obviously, the chimeric ants chasing him are a bit young. In this way, as long as the other party steps on the big tree he has touched, Joey will instantly unleash the ability of the first bomb. Joey also gains some insights from his continuous use of the first bomb. Although the big tree is a hole, it is not counted as his bomb just because Joey touches it casually, but a certain range calculated from the position he touches is his bomb territory. As long as someone touches this part, it will trigger the effect of the bomb and instantly explode. After using his abilities several times, Joey calculated a rough range, which should be a spherical range with a diameter of 50 centimeters centered on his touch position. Any object within this range is considered his first bomb. So Joey's purpose in detonating the bomb was not to kill the opponent at all, but to shatter the big tree and make a momentary mistake for the chimeric ant leaping between the trees, creating an opportunity for the skeleton tank chasing behind to catch up and explode. This battle plan can be said to be full of uncertainty and risk, but it is also the fastest arrangement that Joey can make to eliminate the enemy. Joey must quickly resolve the battle now, because as the battle unfolds, especially with the continuous explosion of the skull tank, his stamina is being consumed by the explosion in a cliff-like manner. The current situation is that every time a tank explodes during a battle, Joey's chances of winning will decrease by 1 point. The sweat on his body had already soaked his clothes, and even though he tried his best to control it while hiding, his breathing was still a bit heavy. Even at this moment, Joey's eyes were slightly bloodshot, and his legs trembled slightly. He knew he only had one chance, and if he couldn't combine it to cause damage to the chimeric ants, perhaps all he had left was to abandon his hand and run away. But the risk is equally high, and the skull tank has been proven to be a waste in terms of speed through practical combat. So once Joey adopts the method of breaking his hand to escape, the skull tank will find it difficult to buy him time. The pain after breaking his hand will also have a huge impact on him, and the smell of blood will bring him a lot of trouble. Killing the Emperor with one hand at the same time is also a hassle, and Joey wouldn't make the decision to cut off the hand unless absolutely necessary. Joey raised his hand and pulled the rifle, carefully aiming the muzzle towards the direction of the big tree. At this moment, he looked more like a vicious wolf that had been driven to the brink of death. Instead of running away with a broken hand, perhaps there is even greater hope in a desperate struggle. Just the skeleton tank that pointed out the direction of the monster to Joey suddenly turned around as he was about to approach the big tree while Joey was anxiously waiting. Looking at the direction the chariot was heading towards, Joey's face was extremely ugly. How could this be? Did the other party see their own strategy? But this is impossible. I haven't shown the first bomb in front of the other party. Is it just a result of their caution? Or is it that firearms such as handguns, torpedoes, etc. create a sense of crisis in the other party? Or is it because the death of a companion made the other person hesitate, or is the other person prepared to wait for more companions to come and reduce the risk of pursuit? Cold sweat slid down from her temples, and Joey couldn't help but show her arched eyebrows again. At the same time, she unconsciously bit the thumb nail of her left hand. Distance, speed, explosion point, time, all of these were roughly estimated and designed by Joey. Now that the chimeric ant has turned its direction, even if it goes back to the big tree that he turned into a bomb, the subsequent attacks of the skeleton tank after the explosion will have a time difference from the surprise attack of the first bomb. Moreover, that thing is clearly not really prepared to go in this direction, and things seem to be heading in the worst direction. Joey's eyes turned slightly red, like a gambler about to lose all the bets, but fortunately there was still something that kept his nerves from breaking out, which was that although the skull tank was still chasing, it did not explode again. This also means that his remaining limited physical strength has not been unlimited and he still has a chance. Joey quickly thought about what other methods he could quickly find and kill the other person, but the several plans that flashed through his mind did not satisfy him. This made his nail-biting action even more fierce, and there were even faint signs of his fingertips being bitten. Can only take the initiative to jump out and intercept the tank and retrieve it. Joey swore that if he had the chance to survive, he would have perfect control over the tank. He swallowed hard and spat out foam. Joey's fingertips had unknowingly oozed blood, but his thoughts became clearer in the pain coming from his fingertips. He still had a chance, the first bomb had not been exposed yet. With a sudden thought, he stood up and was about to pursue the withered and piercing attack, but just then, a flash of extremely fast red light flashed through the distant forest. Joey's steps suddenly paused. Someone. The red light seemed like an arrow, and Joey was a bit uncertain. Boom. The explosion of the tank arrived 3 seconds after the red light hit the target, but Joey was well prepared and took advantage of the flames to carefully look in the direction of the explosion. I saw several figures flickering through the forest, which was already shrouded in darkness, under the reflection of the flames. The two were slightly shorter but moved quickly, while the two were of normal height but had a slightly slower reaction. Joey made an instant judgment and also saw each other's unique and colorful clothing. During this time in the deep mountains and forests, Joey dared to run around recklessly and did not use firearms. He had already guessed the other person's identity. During this time period, among the hunters who appeared in NGL, only Pence and his entourage, who had been on his mind for a long time and had been killed by a headshot, were recognized by him, and also matched the characteristics of the few people he saw at a glance. Memories seemed to be triggered in the mind, and the scenes in the animation flashed by. The captain of Peng Si's team should be a licensed hunter named Bao Kuer, and there are still 2 or 3 miscellaneous fish sauce parties who were solved by the chimeric ants in person. But how did they appear here? Oh ho, the old thief's 391 drawing is completed, and 392 is in the process of being confirmed. Are we finally going to update it? After more than 1,200 days, it seems like, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Mutual Exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Mutual Exploration. Joey raised his hand again but stopped in front of his mouth. He glanced indifferently at the bloodstains on his fingertips and then withdrew his gaze. 10 seconds. This is the time when Joey determines the distance the other person will appear in front of him, and it is also the time it takes for the withered heart-piercing attack to complete the mission and return to his side. As a professional hunter, even if you can't see a stunt double, you will still find the marks left by the skull tank. And can't the psychic really see a double? Joey made a big question mark about this. 10 seconds passed in an instant, and the sound of breaking a tree branch came from afar. The completed skeleton tank ran back and returned to its rightful place on the back of the assassin's hand as the queen reached out. At this moment, the four figures were also revealed in a surrounding shape from afar. Joey didn't even hesitate, raised his hands high and made a surrendering gesture, and took the initiative to walk out of the hidden bushes. At the same time, it can be seen from the eyes of Shoker, shrouded in a misty aura of energy, as he moves from the tank to the position of the assassin queen, that the capable hunter can indeed see the double. Wait, can I see Nyen? Joey was slightly stunned for a moment. Jilyang Jiaying. Without giving Joey more observation time, Bao Qiu spoke up and directly broke Joey's identity. Joey instantly regained his senses, while all his prepared words were stuck in his throat. The speculation about Nyen and himself suddenly came to an end, leaving only. Does he know me? In the next moment, a large number of thoughts flashed through Joey's mind, but his surface expression remained calm with a furrowed figure 8 eyebrows, and his deep, slightly hoarse voice directly answered, "It's me. How could you be here?" The village was attacked by monsters, and everyone either died or was taken away. I was the only one who escaped here. Joey spoke slowly, and with lingering fear, he looked towards the direction of the chimeric ant that had been destroyed by the explosive library before. Explosive Kuer suddenly called out his name, which can be said to have caught him off guard. However, no matter what kind of relationship there is between Bowker and Jilyang Jiaying, there is no problem with him directly stating the situation in the village. Even Joey had a guess in his heart, which was that it wasn't his first time seeing the assassin queen, and this was not surprising from the way the other person looked at her. Based on this, Joey also has a guess. In the intelligence known to Joey, the explorers and others came to investigate because they discovered the presence of monsters in NGL, so the most likely contact with Yoshitaka is in the village. And the reason why I know Yoshitaka Yoshikage is also very likely due to the existence of the Killer Queen. This is an analysis based on Yoshitaka Yoshikage's personality. Jilyang Jiaying is a person who doesn't like to show off, which even makes him achieve the level of controlling the score and ranking third in the class every time he takes an exam. This is a ranking that is not receiving much attention but is excellent enough. In society, Jilyang Jiaying is no different, not competing for first place but also not becoming a crane tail, hovering around the passing line of elites. This made Joey certain that Yoshitaka Yoshikage would also hide himself in such a stable position in the village. This also means that Yoshitaka Yoshikage may have secretly followed Akiko and others, but he will not actively get to know Akiko and others, who are hunters but obviously bring him trouble. At the same time, Yoshitaka Yoshikage, who has been living in NGL, has not had many opportunities to interact with hunters, which means he has a high probability of not knowing that those who control the mind can see the Killer Queen. Based on this, the accidental exposure of the assassin queen to the eyes of the explosive library became a possible occurrence. This is the most reasonable explanation that Joey can think of in an instant. As for whether there may be other simpler or dog-blood ways of understanding, there may be, but in Joey's opinion, the probability is not too high. If he encounters it, then Joey can only blame himself for bad luck. Of course, whether it's really unlucky or not, Joey also needs to try to obtain more information from the explosive library and others to determine. Now that he has given a response, what is waiting for is the response and answer from the few people in the library. Joey's attention was extremely focused because everyone's micro-expressions would provide him with a basis for judgment. If judged correctly, he will have a great advantage, and if judged incorrectly, it may even affect his own life. Peng Si, a cute-looking girl wearing the same brown-yellow hat as Bao Qiu, with green hair, first glanced at Bao Qiu in confusion. Then, upon hearing Joey's answer, she covered her mouth with disbelief and said, "How could that happen? Is that the bug that chased you before?" Bao Qiu, who was shorter and had a doll-like face, frowned calmly. "So what are your next plans? Where are you planning to go?" At this moment, the soy sauce party fully utilized its characteristics. The two of them had no expression on either the words of the explosive warehouse or Joey's answer, but were instead careful and wary of the nearby area. Just looking nervous, it's better to be scared by the previous chimeric ant. However, judging from the bees dancing nearby, Pence probably hasn't let her guard down either. Peng Si's previous glance at Bao Cure had already made Joey understand something. But Joey found out that his performance seemed to have made Baoku see something too. Is it because I was too calm when calling out my name to the explosive library? But the situation at that time was too sudden, and Joey's ability to control himself and only show calmness was the best expression he could think of in an instant. But Joey had an association from Bowker's choice, which was that the sound of Jilyang Jiaying was deliberately called out by Bowker. When Joey tried to analyze the other party, they also probed him at the first moment of meeting. What is the reason for doing this? Joey quickly made various judgments in his mind, but in his mouth he spoke out the draft he had prepared within 10 seconds. I have been investigating about Zalo, and there is a anesthesia planting base about an hour away from here. After being attacked in the village, I plan to go there and take a look. After all, only the organization has weapons to deal with monsters. Speaking, Joey also pointed to the assault rifle hanging on his chest. After a moment of hesitation, Bao Cure's gaze swept over the rifle and his fingers slightly adjusted their direction before speaking, an hour's journey. That's not too far. On the way there, could you please share with us the information you know? Although Bao Cure's tone was polite, Joey could hear or perceive a certain degree of indisputability. Obviously, Bowker has absolute confidence in his own strength and companions, even if he has seen the assassin queen next to Joey and the piercing attack of the shattered chimeric ants before. However, Joey is not surprised by this. Although he has the assassin queen, if there is really a direct conflict now, he will definitely die. This is the difference in combat experience, intuition, ability, and current state. It's not that Joey's assassin queen's ability is not strong, it's just that Joey himself is too weak compared to Bakur. This makes it impossible for him to confront the professional hunter who also possesses the ability to think, Blake Cure, without any surprise attacks or advance arrangements. Fortunately, Joey also had plans for his peers, so after the explosion, he frowned at his beautiful figure 8 and nodded slowly with a slightly stiff expression. At the same time, as Joey nodded, the killer queen slowly disappeared, giving the impression that the killer emperor had automatically disappeared without any threat. This is a deliberate move by Joey, both as a probe and an expression of attitude. The test is to explore how much people like Bao Cure know about his relationship with the assassin queen, while their attitude is to show that although they are somewhat dissatisfied with the means of Bao Cure's threat, they will cooperate. But Joey didn't notice, and when he saw his slightly dissatisfied attitude, Bakur secretly made a gesture to Pence. And from Joey's eyes, the gesture was like the explosive library retracting the threatening action. End of this chapter.